It's an absolute disaster right now. I got still trying to finish up the lift. It's wired. Just have to do the bleeding the hydraulics, fill it up, put the arms on, cable tension for the release. And I'm still trying to put away all these tools, but at the same time, I'm trying to get this thing squared away before the season really kicks off. And so this is one thing I was doing on it. I had a really short feed line going from the fitting off the rail to the fuel pressure regulator back here. And it worked, but it was really short. There's not a lot of give to this. It's PTFE. So I knew that it was butting as the engine torque, the engine pulls this way. So this was starting to butt up a little bit. And I don't think it would have been a problem. It wasn't kinking, but I just didn't like the fact that there was pressure being put on the ends of the fittings. And especially for a fuel feed that's right over a header. So what I ended up doing was the only other option I had without redoing all the lines was to build this. So I'm still waiting for a union to connect this. So this basically will come off the rail, go down the firewall, and then come back up to the regulator. So now when the engine torques, it just squeezes these two together from this long flexible section and this short flexible section. So it should be fine now. It's not quite as clean, but you really don't see it because it goes down and under, and it's not anywhere close to the header. I thought at first I couldn't do this because I figured the header would be in the way. When I looked, the header's actually so far back and under, this doesn't even get close to it. So that's working out. And the other thing I'm doing is putting these WILWOOD brakes on the rear. I originally had this Dr. Diff kit. It's a 10.7 10.7 rotor with Mustang Cobra calipers, but it wasn't enough bias for the rear with the 38 millimeter pistons on the back. So I went to this WILWOOD kit with a 4-piston caliper, and so I'm assembling this whole thing now, and I just wanted to show you something that kind of made me smile. This is the first time I've ever been able to fit some kind of a workbench in my garage, and it was pretty nice being able to work on this instead of the ground, taking these axle snap rings out. So that made me happy. And at some point, I'm going to put a nice big workbench here and like a fabrication table here. So it's just getting me amped up because being able to work in a nice environment, as messy as this is right now and as cluttered as it is, I could see how nice it's going to be when it's done. But I'll let you guys know how this goes and keep you updated. New fuel hose is in. Very hard to see, but it comes down, loops back up, and comes back to the regulator. It's got plenty of room to move in and out now. When this motor torques, this could all flex in the middle where it got straight section there, straight section here. I wrapped it in some DEI fire sleeve as it comes down and comes back up. It really doesn't need it because you see the headers are pretty far off from everything. Even though this does go down to the chassis rail, the headers really aren't anywhere close at that point. But I just like to have that. It looks good, it doesn't chafe, and it's also, even if it insulates a little bit from the engine heat, it keeps the fuel a little bit cooler, which is always good for the motor and good for the pump. All right, so I'm working here on the rear brake setup, and let me show you guys a few tips to look out for, a few things that I came across. So the first thing is this is a WILWOOD 140-11386 kit. I don't have the box. I threw that one out yesterday, but it's a rear kit for, I believe it works on an 8 3/4, but it also works with Dana 60, and I have in this car a Strange S60, but it's all the same. But there are a few things that you have to look out for, and I'll explain that in a second. This is the backing plate. It comes with a parking brake setup. It's a WILWOOD one-piece caliper, one-piece rotor, not the usual WILWOOD two-piece because this has the parking brake assembly inside. 4-piston calipers, and so I'll show you guys. There's an offset that you have to measure on the flange, which I believe, I could be wrong on this, but I believe all the Mopars that use the style of bearing I'm going to show you all have this same offset. But basically what you'll do is with the axle put in to where it would ride on the bearing, you're measuring from the outside of here to the outside of the axle flange, and you should come up with 2.5 inches. So that's going to be the measurement to make sure the offset for your axle is correct for this kit. But I believe the other way of checking this is, I'll show you over here. So this is a Mopar green style bearing, and this is a sealed bearing, And this kit requires you to have this style bearing where you could see there's a channel for an O-ring and a channel for a snap ring that goes around here. So this is the snap ring and that's the O-ring. And you need to have this bearing style because this, what happens is this fits over the axle. Pull this back a little bit. This fits over the axle and then that snap ring actually goes back in and keeps that in place. And then this sandwiches the snap ring between the axle flange and then the O-ring goes back on. But this won't work with the other style bearings or the tapered bearings. So make sure you have this style bearing before trying to use this kit. One thing that I wanted to show you guys is I made this mistake thinking that I knew I should have test fit it, but I just figured it would probably work. And that was a mistake. So this is a WILWOOD, this is a ARP wheel stud. I have screw-in studs on my axle flange on the S60. So this is a 12-point head, chromoly bolt. I really like using these. I use them on the Impala, and I've never had an issue. And so I wanted to put those in there, and when I got this all together, I realized that the head of this bolt, it ends up coming out too far and hitting this spring and catching the edges of these. So I talked to WILWOOD because this is basically the same design as their axle studs also. And I was surprised that it wouldn't work because they sell the same style. But I thought there would have been a little more room to clear everything. But they told me that this spring, they don't recommend it, but you can remove it. But it didn't really matter because it was also hitting the shoe retainer springs here. So there was nothing I could do about those. It was just barely catching them. I probably could have clearanced the bolts a little bit, but instead I just got these from Moser. And these are just 3-inch 1/2 by 20 screw-in wheel studs. They look like the same as the ones that came with the Strange axles. So it's probably, I don't know if they just copy each other or if they use the same thing, but it's a much lower profile 6-point head, and that clears this perfectly. So just be aware that you can't use the hex head style ARP bolts or the hex head style WILWOODs. So just a tip, if you're working with one of these Strange Dana S60 rears, Dana 60 rears with these sealed bearings, the Mopar green bearings, you might get a leak around the axle ends, and it gets all over your wheel and your brakes and everything else. And there's two reasons this could happen. So if it's an older rear, older bearing, or a damaged bearing, these bearings are sealed. It could be coming through the bearing and out the other end, which in that case, you need to replace the bearings. But I had the problem with a new rear, and I've had it before on other rears too. And one tip I picked up is if you see this, there's an O-ring here for this bearing race. The O-ring doesn't always do the best job of sealing the axle oil from coming out and around the flange. So what I do is I take some of this green RTV and put the green RTV, just a very thin coat around this bearing race, and also make sure this is all clean with brake cleaner, this is all clean with brake cleaner, and just do a very thin coat, let it set for a little bit, and then just put this whole assembly back in, and that helps stop that oil from coming out. When I first put this rear in, I got it new from Strange, so I didn't touch it. I figured it would be fine. And sure enough, both ends started leaking, and within a couple of miles, my brakes were soaked with gear oil. So I ended up doing that, and it worked, fixed it, no leaks after that. But it's something worth trying if you have an issue. So you can see here the kind of clearance you're working with and why those 12-point ARP bolts wouldn't work. But these look like they clear. Everything spins freely, doesn't catch anything, so I think we're good.